Your pulse is still hammering from that last boss. Loot window pops, victory theme crescendos, and then the game pulls a handbrake so violent you can smell the burning rubber. Suddenly, you're lost in a glitter maze, fumbling through pitch-black tunnels, or relegated to pouring vintage Pinot for nobles who haven't heard of Inside Voices. Why do certified masterpieces sabotage their own momentum? Tonight, we're diving into 5 legendary what were they thinking moments, and why most of us end up forgiving them anyway. Stick around. There's a good chance the sequence that broke you will make the list. Number 1. Final Fantasy XII. The Great Crystal Gaslights You. Every horror story you've heard is true. Deep beneath Guravagan sits the Great Crystal, a shimmering tesseract of stairs, teleports, and identical blue corridors. The designers cruelly yanked your minimap, renamed every chamber in pseudo-astronomical jargon, Davakari Siru Prati, and told you to find a half-dozen waystones that deactivate gates on a 60-second timer. Miss the path by one fork? Enjoy another lap. Veterans used to treat this pain as optional because most high-tier magics were shop items. Then the 2017 Zodiac Age remaster quietly relocated spells like Hastega and Shelga into the crystal's deepest bowels, forcing even speedrunners back into the nightmare. Strategy sites sprang up overnight with color-coded schematics. Some look more like subway diagrams than JRPG maps. Reddit still erupts with fresh "Help Me, I'm Lost" threads almost 20 years after launch. Yet the same commenters swap war stories with giddy nostalgia. I spent 3 hours inside, but the moment I worked out holding Excalibur, I felt like a god. The crystal proves a simple truth. Pain becomes legend the second you conquer it. 2. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Royal Waiter, Royale Pain. Warhorse's historical sim is famous for muddy boots and brutal swordplay. Nobody bought it for sommelier roleplay. Late in the main quest, The King's Gambit, you infiltrate a secret council by serving drinks. On paper, it's espionage. Pour the correct wine, hover politely, eavesdrop on politics. In practice, you shuttle back and forth between casks while courtiers argue about troop levies you deduced hours earlier. Worse, a well-documented white wine bug soft locks the meeting if you finish the first round holding the wrong carafe. Steam forums bulge with desperate saves. YouTubers post workaround guides lasting 15 minutes just to keep the story moving. As the scene dragged, a separate storm brewed. Preview clips confirmed an optional same-sex romance path, prompting anti-woke corners of the internet to declare medieval authenticity dead. Developers answered with a shrug and a tweet. History had people yelling about nonsense too. The Gamer and PC Games both covered the backlash in early February, noting that pre-order numbers barely budged. Patch notes have since trimmed dialogue and fixed wine placement, but even post-patch, veterans recommend brewing coffee before hitting Attend Banquet. When the doors finally open and you sprint back into open fields, the relief is so intense it almost feels designed. The game teaches politicking through negative reinforcement. 3. Another Crab's Treasure. Pitch Black Pincer Panic. Aggro Crab's bubbly undersea souls-like charms you with soda can shells and snarky crustacean quips. Midway through, that charm evaporates when Krill plunges into the midnight trench, and your vision collapses to a thumb-sized aura. Enemies lurk just beyond the darkness, ready to ambush. The studio's laudable accessibility suite lets you soften damage or slow time. But in this section, even legally blind streamers reported the experience as functionally impossible. One blind gamer review called the trench an exclusion zone painted in black. Mainstream outlets echoed the critique, praising the cheerful art direction while blasting the sudden tonal whiplash. The Verge quipped that the game goes from Finding Nemo to Subnautica on Nightmare mode. Fans on Steam started posting makeshift brightness mods, and in typical Souls-like fashion, memes depicting Krill wielding a tactical flashlight. Why keep it? Level designers later admitted in a Discord Q&A that they wanted a single fear spike to remind players that the ocean isn't a playground. Conceptually fair, but many argue it crosses from fear into frustration, because every navigational tool the game teaches you, a bright shell glow, distinct landmark silhouettes, stops working. That frustration is still mercifully short. Imagine a mission where nothing threatens you except the creeping dread of boredom, and the only weapon you wield is a wine jug. Number 4. KOTOR 2. Paragus, the prologue that wouldn't die. The Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 opener deserves credit. It nails atmosphere. You wake alone, drifting through sterile corridors, listening to malfunction alarms echo off metal walls. Anxiety builds, then stalls. 10-minute stretch into 25 as you reroute power, fight identical droids, and watch a full-minute docking cutscene just to introduce Darth Sion's flagship. Every replay magnifies the drag. Modders to the rescue. Streamlined Paragus on Deadly Stream slashes dormitory backtracking, merges redundant terminals, and warps you to the Ebon Hawk in half the vanilla time. For players who still want lore but ditch the monotony, a workshop skip Paragus toggle bluntly jumps straight to Telos Station. Forum polls routinely crown these among the most downloaded KOTOR 2 mods, right alongside HD texture packs. Yet, ask first-timers, and many defend the slow burn. Paragus taught me to fear the Sith before I even saw a red blade. The level lays groundwork for the game's meditation on trauma. Krea's whispers feel colder against that lonely backdrop. It's a case study in how replayability can warp perception. What's haunting once becomes laborious on visit number 3. Long hallways are annoying. Long hallways wrapped in invisible walls feel downright cruel, especially when they're gorgeous enough to tease you into exploring.
5. Black Myth Wukong, Chapter 3 and the Wall of Walls. Game Science's AAA debut floored critics with mythical bosses and painterly vistas. But Chapter 3 tests even patient players. The snow biome opens wide, but only in theory. Invisible collision boxes shepherd you down a single meandering trail. Wander 2 feet off, and your immortal monkey silently bonks an unseen barrier. Steam threads titled, "Chapter 3 is really long," and "Invisible walls at boss fights are cheap." Redditors joke that the dev team must charge rent for all the extra square footage no one can enter. Length amplifies the frustration. First-time wanderers easily sink 2+ hours into the zone, longer than Acts 1 and 2 combined. By the 5th identical ridgeline, even the orchestral score starts to feel like white noise. On New Game Plus, veterans speedrun the trek in under 20 minutes, proving the excess lies in orientation, not enemy count. Then the studio stepped on its own rake. A leaked content creator guideline warned streamers to avoid mentioning COVID-19, Chinese politics, or feminist propaganda. Forbes and Kotaku confirmed the document's legitimacy, igniting a culture war side plot that sometimes overshadowed coverage of the invisible walls. Ironically, the controversy reflected the chapter's design. The game erects unseen fences, and the marketing team tried to erect conversational fences. Players hated both. Still, once you beat the chapter's last Borking and step into the Jade Temples of Act 4, resentment cools. The visual payoff is enormous, and many players report a strange, almost Stockholm Syndrome fondness for the frozen maze on subsequent runs. From Ivalice's uncharted crystal lattice to Wukong's frosty no-go zones, each of these detours sprang from ambition. Designers wanted disorientation, thematic contrast, or narrative weight. What they sometimes delivered was exhaustion. Yet the same pain often cements the memory. Surviving the Great Crystal becomes a badge of honor. Powering through the wine tasting turns Henry from blacksmith's son into bona fide spy. So here's the takeaway. Greatness and aggravation ride the same razor's edge. Push boundaries, and occasionally you push players off a cliff. The trick, for devs and for us, is figuring out when the sting is worth the story. Now I want to hear your war stories. Which beloved game made you rage quit for an hour? Drop it in the comments, smash like if a no-map dungeon ever devoured your weekend, and hit subscribe. Next episode, we're spotlighting glitches that accidentally became franchise staples, including one that saved a studio from bankruptcy. Ring the bell so YouTube doesn't shove that reveal behind its own invisible wall. May your checkpoints be merciful, your brightness sliders effective, and your wine jugs forever bug-free. See you in the next adventure.